finally time to go into this place, or the dungeon, called Eureka Orthos. Now, Eureka Orthos came out in Endwalker in patch 6.35. And during patch 6.35, I was doing Heaven on High, and I eventually cleared it, and you can watch that video and my Necromancer video in the description below. But as I was doing Heaven on High, I was watching people do Eureka Orthos. It was fun to watch people learning and doing the bosses and clearing it. And I knew eventually I was going to go in there. Now, when you clear Eureka Orthos, you could get 2 titles actually. One of them is called True Steel, and to get it is basically clear the 100th floor of Eureka Orthos. Now the other one, the most important one, is called Once and Future King or Queen, depending on the gender of your character. To be able to get Once and Future King or Queen, you have to clear Eureka Orthos from floor 1 to 100 all by yourself as any job without dying. Since I cleared Palace of the Dead and Heaven on High, I thought, yeah, I could do this. So here we are in patch 6.51, almost about like a year later. So I made my way to Mordona and talked to a female Makote, and then made my way towards the Crystal Tower. So in case you guys don't know or didn't know or probably just don't care, so the lore is like during the 3rd Astral Era, when the Elegant Tower was at its peak of glory or whatever, they built like a research facility under the Crystal Tower, and that's where the Emperor and like group of researchers did like cloning and resurrecting experiments and whatnot. And we're going in there to find the deep darkest secrets or something like that. I don't know. I don't know a lot. I'm just going off from the cutscenes. Okay. So then our favorite catboy and the female Makoto that we met opens the gateway to Eureka Orthos. And then I talked to Khatun, and then my journey to Eureka Orthos began. Alright, so now let's talk about the new stuff and some of the things that Square Enix changed and introduced in Eureka Orthos. Alright, first off, enemies cannot crit hit you. So any enemy that hits you, they're not going to be able to crit. But if you get hit by any AoE, you're going to do a lot of damage and probably going to one-shot you. Just assume everything is going to one-shot you, okay? Like any AoE or whatever. Square Enix introduced 3 new Protomanders. You have the Protomander of Storms, which basically when you use it, it makes all enemies on the current floor draw to 1 HP. Next, you have the Protomander of Lethargy, which makes all the enemies cast slower and do auto attacks slower for about 10 minutes. And lastly, we have the Protomander of Dread. The best way I could describe the Protomander of Dread is if you take the Protomander of Rage and the Protomander of Lust from Palace of the Dead, combine them, and then you get the Protomander of Dread. When you use it, you become a Gigabot, and you can be able to punch enemies one shot like the Rage, and you can also use a range attack, which is the Lust ability, and give enemies vulnums or whatever. And since the Protomander of Dread is kind of like a Rage, the no knockback floor debuff is back. I believe all of the floor buffs and debuffs are back from the previous deep dungeons, other than the no sprint debuff. The no magicite debuff is replaced with the no demiclones, which means you can't use any demiclones. And speaking of demiclones, there's 3 different types of demiclones that they introduced in Eureka Orthos, basically a replacement of the magicites from Heaven on High, and they can only come from silver chests as well. First up, you have Une. She's basically like a white mage. She will put arrow dots on the enemy and would cast stone, and also will heal you if your HP is like about 50% or something like that, and will also give you stone skin as well. Doga is basically a black mage. He would do a good amount of DPS, and he also put like a thunder dots on the enemy, and can also petrify the enemy for about 10 seconds. And lastly, the 3rd demiclone is the Onion Knight, aka Onion Bro, aka Giga Chad. He's a paladin and he does the most DPS than the other 2 demiclones. He can heal you if your HP reaches 50%, I think, or somewhere around there. And he will put a 30-second dodge on the enemy, and he just does good damage. And then we had Dread Beast. And you could tell they are Dread Beasts when they had like a red glow around them. All the Dread Beasts has their own mechanics and has their own like buff when you kill them. When you kill the Lamia Queen, you'll be given like a small health regen. The Mericidian gives you a damage boost, and the Kog'Maw gives you a damage reduction buff. Now all of the buffs last for like 30 minutes. You also get like a free Accursed Horde and a gold chest when you kill a Dread Beast as well. And also in Eureka Orthos, you start from level 81 and maxed out at level 90. Yep, we skip level 80 and moving straight into level 90. Jumping into the first set of floors, first thing I noticed is that all the enemies have a lot of health and the respawn time is like 1 minute. So every minute a new enemy spawns, just like in Palace of the Dead and Heaven on High. From floors 1 to 30, bronze chests can potentially be a mimic. All the enemies are not too bad. The behemoth has been downgraded from a boss to a regular enemy, and once the behemoth's health is like below 40 or 35%, it will cast Ecliptic Meteor. So make sure you know you're not in the line of sight because you can LOS it. The floor 10 boss is not too difficult, but then I realized every auto attack from the boss does like 2k, and my health was depleting very quick, even with food, strength, and steel. And I died. So I ran it again. I got to the boss again, this time with a Doga Demi-Clone. And so I ran it again the third time, and I encountered a Dread Beast for the first time. Now here's a little information about the Dread Beast, and that is, if you want to fight these guys one-on-one, you're gonna die. They'll do insane damage to you, even just one hit. And even you're like trying to kite them or running away from them, they can still hit you from range, which is insane. But I think one of the best ways to deal with them is to just not deal with them. Or if you're willing to sacrifice a witching and the storms or whatever, yeah, you can do it. And all of the Dread Beast aggro type is sight, so maneuvering around them is, you know, it's not complicated. So I used the Portament of Storms for the first time, and I used it because I wanted the regenerating HP buff from the Lamia Queen. Now when you use the storms, yes, it drops all the enemies on the current floor to 1 HP, but every server tick, all the enemies are regenerating the health like by 10%. If you get unlucky when you pull an enemy, you might pull the enemy with 10% HP instead of 0.1% HP, which is what happened here. And I almost died, okay? I almost died, but since it's just the early floors, the Dread Beast didn't really hurt that much, even though it really hurt it a lot. And here's a little trick with the Portament of Storm. If an enemy is not in combat and is below 80% HP, you will not aggro the enemy. It doesn't matter what aggro type they are, you cannot aggro the enemy unless they are 80% HP or higher. That's just how it works. So you can use the Portament of Storm to get through a room, and also with the no healing floor debuff, if you use the storms, every enemy is not going to regen their health. So it's basically like a free pass, but this trick does not work on mimics. Wait, what the fuck? So then I got lucky this time because I ended up getting 2 Uni Demi-Clones. And I killed the Mericidian Dread Beast, so I also had the damage buff. And since Une can heal me and place Stone Skin on me, I cleared the first boss of the Deep Dungeon. So after completing the first set of floors, I created a second file. I used the same method that I did in Heaven on High, and I did this because so I could upgrade my armor a little quicker and also gain more knowledge and experience on the set of floor or any set of floor. Floors 11 to 20 isn't that difficult. I noticed this floor set has something to do with like nature, because there's a lot of enemies that are like plants and trees and just like grass growing all over the floor set or whatever. The floor 20 boss wasn't too bad as well. Again, just assume every AoE is going to one-shot you, alright? So you could go in with the I need to play safe mentality when you go into any set of floor or whatever. Floors 21 to 30. Now we're in some like elegant castle or tower or whatever. Not too bad. There are 3 enemies that has dragon in their name. and they look like dragons to be fair. But the Retrimones are back with their passive infrared guidance system attack, but this time they don't stalk you or follow you just to shoot you like in Heaven or High. And now we have the Voivrays, or I think that's how you pronounce it. I might be wrong with that. Now these guys, they do out of combat stuff. Sometimes they will do out of combat AoEs, and if you stand in them, you'll get a Vaughn up. When you fight them, they're not too bad, but out of combat, you know, they may get annoying because you get Vaughn up. Now the good news is they're not too bad, you know, it's just a Vaughn up. The bad news is they're not the only enemies that could do this, which we will get into later on. And just look at this animation of the Protomander of Lethargy, like holy crap. And also, if you use a Lethargy and then all of a sudden a new enemy pops up or spawns in, they're not going to be affected by the Lethargy, and it also counts to mimics as well when you get them from opening a chest. The 430 boss is Tiamat's, not too bad. Again, you have the classic Hot Whale, Hot Wing and Hot Tails. And me and Onion Bro, we destroyed Tiamat's clone. After defeating Tiamat's clone, I now have the option to run floors 21 to 30 to, you know, go up to higher floors, get practice, and farm for armor. So I decided to run floors 21 to 30 to farm more armor, and also to farm more of the Orthos potions. And I ran this floor set like a bunch of times. Like, you could get max Etherpool armor from floors 21 to 30, and along the side you can farm the Orthos Etherpool fragment to get more Orthos potions. So after running this set of floors many times, I got around like 310 Orthos potions, and I decided to move up. Keep in mind, both of my files started in floor 21, not floor 1. Floors 31 to 40 isn't too bad. There's going to be a lot of returning enemies from the past deep dungeons. You have General Grievous with his point blank AoE and his huge line AoE, and you also have the classic Chimeras with their classic Dragon voice and Ram's voice. But you know, these easier versions are not too hard. Now the reason why I said easier versions is because the Chimeras are going to reappear later on in the higher floors. Twintonia's clone is the level 40 boss. He had the classic Twister mechanic, and at some point Twintonia would do a dive, and make sure you know you don't get baited, because as Twintonia does the dive, it will also leave a Twister, so you gotta keep moving after the dive. And now we enter the crystal caves of floors 41 to 50. Looks like the ones from Palace of the Dead. And I gotta say, I like this area because, you know, I love the colors of this area. There's some crystals that are like in the shape of like a tree or something, which I like. But don't be fooled by the beautiful colors of the crystal caves, because, you know, at this point of the deep dungeon, I think there's gonna be, you know, some enemies that can be dangerous, like the Whorehound and the Spriggan. Even though in the past deep dungeons, the Spriggan were easy to kill, but at this one, they're kind of dangerous because they do like mini tank busters, and they'll eventually get a haste, and with that haste they'll just auto tag and do tank busters to you, and it could be bad. But here's a little trick: any enemies that put a haste on themselves but they're lethargy, the lethargy will counter the haste, and they can't be able to haste themselves because of the lethargy. And arm's length can also counter the haste as well. I forgot to mention, but floors 31 to 60 silver chest can potentially be a mimic, so yeah. And also with mimics, you can use arm's length against them in Eureka Orthos, and the chances of damage clones from silver chests is a little higher. And then you have the Kokokons, and they do the same out of combat AoEs like the Voivrays, and when you get hit by it, you get a Vaughn up, and when you fight them, they just do inline AoE, so not too bad. But they do the same thing as the Retrimones did in Heaven or High, which is if you enter like a proximity around them or whatever room they're in, and you just pass them, you don't fight them or anything, they will try to find you just to hit you with a AoE. And the music in here be banging though. And then you have the level 50 boss, which is a Chimera. Remember when I said the Chimeras will appear again later on in the floors, but this time is in the form of a boss. The boss would do Thunderous Cold or Cold Thunderous, which is your typical in or out or in. And we will see the Chimera once again later on. Floors 51 to 60, again, like the previous floor set, some of the enemies are dangerous. Like the Rock Fin, you could LOS is line AoE. If you don't, you dead. And you have the Ymir's, it will give itself a ice spike buff to where any like physical damage or you physically attacking it, you will die. Press escape, don't target the Ymir. This goes to every job because the auto attacks from every job is physical damage. The first time I fought the Ymir, I put wildfire on it. Then the Ymir did galley charge, but my wildfire was still on it. I thought I was gonna die, but I didn't die. And this also works for Queen as well. So I'm guessing the damage has to be from you, but if you manually press wildfire to detonate it, and same thing for Queen, if you press those buttons, your character actually pulls out their gun and you can accidentally and potentially auto attack them. Just don't press any buttons. And I'm assuming this also works for like Dark Knight's Steam. The ice sprites, when you kill them, they actually don't die. They will do like a cast where they'll explode, right? Self-detonate. And I always have to remind myself that they don't actually die until they explode. Floor 16 Minotaur boss is not too bad. It has this pattern mechanic where the Minotaur will show you where it's going to cleave, and there's like 2 patterns to it, but they like alternate each time, so it's not hard to figure out. It's not hard to identify. And wait, do you hear that music? I don't know what's going on up there, but anyways. Floors 61 to 70, there are enemies that are dangerous, but there are some of them that are manageable. Gochas can now potentially be a mimic. The Diplodocus is back, and they're annoying because their proximity. And if there's enemies standing in their peculiar light AoE, it gives them a 50% evasion buff, and that could be annoying. And then you have the Orthos ninjas, and since they're ninjas, you can't hear them, and they're patrols as well. And if your HP is like below like 20%, I think, they will do assassinates and automatically kill you. The Drakes will do the same thing as the Ymir's. Moaning Scales grants them the ice spikes buff. And then you have the Phallic, and they're known as the kiting killer. And that's because when you fight them, if you're kiting them, you just run away from them. They will do electric cachexia, which is basically a huge donut AoE. And it's supposed to be like gotcha, mechanic or whatever. So the Eternal boss is not too bad. There's 2 different types of preternatural turns. If the boss is glowing, then that means you need to get under the boss because it's going to be a donut. If it's not, then get out. And then you have like the crystal mechanics. You just look for the 4 crystal that drops, and you see if the boss is going to do in or out, and you just position yourself where the safe spot is, and it's not really that difficult. And now we enter floor 71 to 80, and these are probably the most difficult floor sets in Eureka Orthos because there's a lot of dangerous enemies and I need to be careful. Alright, first up, the Gula Gula. They'll do a cleave, but don't stand in front of it yet because it will do another one, but it's untelegraphed. The Griffins are back, and you can LOS the Winds of Winter or whatever it's called. And I don't really pull them as much because I just avoid them. The Thunder Beast is probably one of the most dangerous enemies in this floor set because when fighting them, they would crouch down and then they would do an untelegraphed point blank AoE. So when you see it crouch down like that, get away from it. But don't go too far from it, because if you go too far from it, it would do a large donut AoE, and you're gonna die if you don't make it. And then we have the classic Sasquatches. Man, the researchers really did some cloning technology because a lot of their experiments happens to be enemies from old deep dungeons. Now, they're probably the most dangerous because just like the other previous deep dungeons, they would do a ripe banana, gives itself a buff, right? But this time, they do out of combat AoEs. The AoE is huge and you could LOS it, but it's not like the Void Rays and the Kokokons, because if you stand in it, you die. Yeah, it does like 300k damage, and so that's why you see me here, like, you know, like being careful, like looking at the other room, because you never know there's gonna be a Sasquatch there unless you can hear it. Now, out of combat, they're scary. In combat though, they're not too bad. They gap close to you and they just do a stool pelt AoE, and that's it. The floor 80 boss is not too bad. You have the magnet mechanics, opposite attracts and same repels, and depending on your debuff, make sure you get pulled and towards next to the boss. You don't want to stand in the middle of the boss, because during this mechanic, going under the boss can kill you. In my first attempt, I forgot that you can't go under the boss and I died. Wait, what? And now we're here in floors 81 to 90. We're no longer in the crystal caves. I actually don't know where we are. It's funny because when I first saw this, the first thing that came to my mind was the end world in Minecraft. Floors 81 and beyond, the chances of getting diamond clones is more higher this time. This floor set is not too bad. What I will say is that in almost every floor in this floor set, you're always going to be guaranteed to get like a floor debuff. In floor 82, I was given a sprint buff and a no item debuff. And the first gold chest that opened was a mimic. The game really thought that the no item debuff will give me more of a stressful time, but with the sprint buff, boy, were they wrong.
You gotta be kidding.
The Kato Blepas do the our combat AoEs, but is in the form of a gaze. The classic raids are back. The Spectre does left or right sweep. They can also do ringing or surrounding burst. Ringing is a donut AoE and surrounding is a point blink. The administrator boss is not bad. I think this fight is a little bit more fast paced than the other bosses that we've seen in Eureka Orthos. Once you know all of the mechanics and all of these safe spots, then this boss should be pretty easy. Now we are here in the last set of floors. There are some enemies that are like not too difficult, but there are some enemies that are dangerous. The Zagnos will do out of combat AoEs like the Sasquatches. The Chimeras are back for the third time, and in this floor set they're patrols and they aggro by sights, and when you fight them they'll gap close to you, do Dragon's Voice or Rand's Voice, but they will also do Rand's Breath or Engulfing Breath or Dragon's Breath. But after the Telegraph AoE goes away, make sure you go back in front of the Chimera, because if you stand behind it for a little bit too long, it will do like a scorpion kick. You have the Fitters, and they will do the out of combat AoEs like the Sasquatches and the Xagnos. It will kill you, you stand in it. And then floor 99 is a boss battle. For the first time in the deep dungeon, Square Enix put a final boss or whatever in the final floor set. Throughout the fight, it would be like an ice and fire mechanic where you have an ice debuff. You want to get hit with fire. If you get hit with the same debuff, you will die. Now, after clearing Excalibur for the first time, I did not go through the portal. I did not go to Forge 100. I just left and went onto my second file, cleared the floor set, killed Excalibur, and I just left. So I logged out of FF14 to take a break for the day, because the next day I was going to start from floor 1 and try and go for the clear. And I remember thinking, you know what? Let's try to one-shot this. Alright, last boss. We're gonna do this. No cuts, no deaths. We're gonna do this one shot. And for the music, we're gonna go the old-fashioned way. Cue the music. Alright. Let me get everything set up. Alright, let's do this, Onion Bro. We got this. Nice. Fire. Fire. No swap. Glacialis. Fire. Fire. No swap. In. Glacialis. Fire. Good. Ice. No swap. In. Wait. Good job. FFXIV. Ice. Right side. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. Eureka Orthos is now cleared. Oh my god. Alright, let's get that screenshot. Ow. Oh man. If any of you guys are going after the Once and Future King or Queen title, or even the Lone Hero or Necromancer title, don't be afraid to make mistakes, because you can learn from them. And since you're by yourself, all the blame is on you. But if your internet goes out or whatever, then yeah, you can blame your internet. Just keep trying and keep believing, because once you defeat Excalibur and see the pylon, a passage open up, you're gonna be happy like a motherfucker. And this marks the trilogy for Deep Dungeon. They said they had new plans for Deep Dungeon and Dawn Trail, so we don't know what that means other than to just speculate and stuff. But it has been a fun ride for me so far, you know, clearing all of the Deep Dungeons in Endwalker all in one expansion, and I myself had a really fun time doing Deep Dungeon. I'm excited for Dawn Trail, and you know, I don't know what they're gonna do. We'll probably need to wait for like 3 or 4 years for the next Deep Dungeon, but we don't know. But hey, I am a Once and Future King now.